Hey, everybody, this is Big Swiss with 520 Collective. I am here for our first episode of The Process. I have Knaladeus here. We are going to be discussing how he went through the process of making his newest album, I Was There. So, welcome to the show, Knaladeus. How are you today?
Oh man, I'm great, man. Excited to talk to you, man.
Great, great. Hey, so we kind of got this kicked off because your album dropped, and part of my process as like a Christian hip hop reviewer or critique is that Friday mornings I wake up early and I break my phone out, and then I will go through my release radar or whatever is going on, and then I'll actually just start cracking notes out on like specific album releases. And on the
Right.
ones where I do a no skip, I will send that artist those notes. So I sent you my notes, and then we kind of started talking and invited you on the show.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so what I want to do here is talk more on like some album specific questions that I had on how you got into it. So, man, first off, like, what were the things that were going through your head to start this album? It seemed very personal, very
Yeah.
introspective. Like, what made you get into that headspace to make this album?
You know, it's funny. What really started it was I had gotten a new computer. I want to say 2021 maybe, um, top of the year, and the hard drive got wiped. I don't
Oof.
know why, and it's a solid state. So it was literally I had it built, gaming parts. A friend of mine walked me through it. It's like, dude, you need a gaming parts, man. It's gonna run real efficient if you customize it. All right. And so I'm like, okay, cool. That the M.2,
Yep.
solid state drive. I did a Windows update, and even Microsoft kind of answered for it because they were like, oh, our servers were down, and then when I mid update, it said bloof, it just wiped it all, zapped it all out. So I lost a lot of an album I was working on for like 2 years or something since
Wow.
I started talking with Dayton, and then I was frustrated. So I was just so upset, man. There was so many emotions. So really, this was the second of two projects I was working on within a matter of 2-3 months. And the first project was extremely like boom bap, uh like just me venting, just like going kind of just like I call it like my guru meets premiere thing with a friend of mine called So Is Real, my bro. We go back to like '07, and that's coming like in the summers sometime. So I'm giving you a little excuse on that. But this second project, I was there, started from a place almost like a place of healing, right? Where I was like, okay, uh, I'm not frustrated about it as much, and I felt like I was getting through a smoother place, but I still wanted to like express myself, like really go into that place. And I think the first record I made, realistically, was a song called "Anxious." It was anxious, and then that started from an actual like me having somewhat of an anxiety attack. I want to say, middle of the night, and I started writing about it. And then I came over here. This keyboard right here is where I played all the keys: electric piano, guitar, bass lines. All of it was made on this, and drum patterns. I made a lot of them on this bad boy right here.
Wow.
So all of the melodies are original, none no samples. And if I sampled myself. It's so one exception is I just sampled myself, but all of this was played here, and I would just come here and work the melodies out on the keyboard, and then start writing from there. But yeah, it started from a place of trying to heal from being frustrated with all that, a little depressed about it. I was like, man, 2 years of work. Dayton gave me some space because he was like, I get it, just and out of it came 4 or 5 records, and then it led to the me. Now I got to see it through because
Yeah.
I have 4 or 5 starters.
That's awesome. Not that you lost all that data, but just that you were able to
Yeah.
take that stress and turn it into an art form.
Yeah,
One of my
praise
questions
God.
I had on here was specifically about anxious and self esteem. Those two songs, when I first heard them, like literally, like brought me to tears as I was listening
Oh
to it
wow.
because the stories were one, they were relatable, and then two, I just recently watched a video on how Pixar uses like high happy keys in happy and sad moments of their music or of their movies to make you cry. And
Oh,
so when I
wow.
I noticed that you were using like a higher note for the like the horn section in Anxious, and I feel like that was what was triggering me when I heard it. So
Wow.
when you're developing like your samples and making your music, how do you go through like
Hmm. That's a great question. You know, it's funny. I'm more the instrumentation usually feeds the writing or the feeling. So I always say that the beats talk back to you. And in this case, anxious was a rarity because the emotion or the feeling was dictated first. I felt something. I said, you know what? I'm gonna write exactly about what happened. And but I knew I needed a backdrop. So that the dun 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 all of that was played here. So I just started fiddling around. I'm not like the best piano player, but I know some fundamentals, so I can play chordings and all that. And I started. I heard that melody in my head when I was dropping my kids off after I had that kind of woke up with an anxiety and I had that dream. I started coming over here and I came back home and I started going bun, bun, da, 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 and I started just following that and the weirdest thing is, and I know it seems mystical for some artists and like, oh, I heard, but I hear music uh very quickly. Like I started playing it and I can hear everything else playing out in my head. I just have to find it. I would almost even say the album is only ever 85% what I really wanted, what I heard. So like that's me trying to find what I hear in my head with whatever sounds I have. So I'm like, like the bass line, I'm doing the bass, I'm playing it like this. I'm everything. Even the horns are played by hand. They're just played through virtual instruments. So everything's intentional with that. But I hear it. So like the horns were supposed to be like a counter melody to uh I wanted to create the horns were creating anxiety by the way they were, you know what I mean?
right,
Like, it was supposed to
right.
be, like, a lot of stuff going on, but my wife it's funny, talking about your wife. My wife was like, "Why does it sound so pretty?" And you're talking about that's how she explains it.
It
"Why does it sound so
does.
nice? But you're talking about anxious, anxiety." And the way I told her was the way I felt about it was, when someone's going through anxiety
Mm.
or depression, whatever it is, they mask it. They never tell you, "Hey, man, I'm anxious. I'm sad." Uh, Usually they have a smile. So I wanted it to feel. I wanted it to contrast what I was feeling.
Wow,
So
that's deep.
I want my wife heard the beat before I rapped to it because I said, "Hey, babe, look, listen to what I made." And she came in and heard the instrumentation. She goes, "Wow, that's a beautiful record." She says, "What you going to talk about?" I said, "I'm anxiety." And she was like, "What?" And she's like starts kind of like fake dancing, and I was like, "That's what I want. I like that." And then she left, and I finished writing, and
I'm not going to
and
be able
so
to listen
yeah.
to that song the same now because of that, because of
Uh,
that story. Like, I think that's true. I mean, we talk about that a lot in our community groups, just about like authenticity and like, people have the natural hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. And like, but on the inside,
right.
things are going down.
It's all
So
masked.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like, do you have like a community that you go to that you can share those type of things with, like in like a biblical community that you're sharing? I mean, obviously you're with like the
Oh,
menace
yeah.
movement guys are probably part of that community, but you have like a local body.
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah. So I attend a church, New Birth. It's actually in Kissimmee, so it's like 20, 30 minutes away. But um, I've known that pastor since I was like 13, right? Um, we went to another church, which is like my other home. It's called Body of One Ministries. Shout out to Pastor Frank. That's like another spiritual dad there. They taught me a lot of how to go back to the grassroots of the faith, where I got all head knowledge and theological at one point in my life, and God had to humble me and bring me back to a place of like, come back to the altar, come back, just I just want your heart. I don't want all that is good, like apologetics are great, all these things, but it's like if you can't go back to what the pastor I'm talking about prior, the one I know since I was 13, he asked me a question when I was 16, bro. It was a corporate question because my youth group days were so vital in my life to shaping me as a Christian now. If it wasn't for those days where they came and picked me up by force and I didn't want to go to church, and they come in a van and the leaders be like, "Nope, man, you're coming to this summer program." You're going, that helped shape me into who I am today. My pastor asked a corporate question to the youth group, the teenagers. He said, Do you know what the gospel is? Can you explain the gospel? If I asked you right now, what is the gospel? Can you give me an answer? And he said, don't answer the question. It's a rhetorical question. I want you to live your faith out like that. Can you give me the gospel at any given moment? Because that's what it's about, right? And that question plagued me for my whole teenage life because I remember going, I can't break down the gospel, the basics of the like I've been in church most of my life and I couldn't think of how to eloquently or simply put it. You know, Einstein said, if you can't put something simply, you're not an expert in it. I'm saying it in layman's terms, but when I, you know, if you can't break something down simply, you're not an expert in it. If you can't break it down to a child, you don't know what you're talking about. That's why I love that Jesus talked to children. You know, he spoke to children. He could break it down in parable and form or whatever. And so I understanding what the gospel was, that helped shape my life. Like, oh, what is the gospel? Wow, that's, you
Mm.
know, you know, all this head knowledge, right? But then you're like, can you tell me what the gospel is? I'm like, huh? You know, and that things of that nature. So I would say like New Birth is a great place for me. Honestly, other than that, a lot of the people who've been in my life since my teenage years that are still around that help mold me, mentors, like other father figures, they're still heavy in my life right now. I can easily call them, hey man, I need prayer, or I'm going through some things, you know.
So what does it look like? You know, you got a community, you're in like probably one of the best top hip hop crews right now. When you're in that album creative mode, what does your daily devotion look like to
Mm.
Christ? Like, do you change like maybe your Bible reading plan, or is it more prayer, more reflection? Like, what does that look like? How do you let the Spirit guide you when you're creating?
You know, I try to nutshell that one because there's a whole story surrounding it. But 2000 going into 2018, 2000 end of 2017, I had to get surgery on my Achilles tendon, reconstructive surgery. I used to weigh, and it all has to do with that. I used to weigh 365, 66 pounds, give or take. And I needed surgery on my Achilles tendon. I was born with short tendons. They didn't develop. I had heel spurts. I was flat
Mm,
footed.
mm,
And all that was just a, you know, I used to work security. My legs were terrible. They used to be in pain, cramps, you name it. I used to have Charlie horses in my calf muscles every night. And I got used to having cramps in my calf muscles. It was weird. And I could actually anticipate when I was going to have a cramp, where I could tell my wife, I'm about to get a cramp. Just let me go through it. Don't let me get tense. You know, it was like, oh, it's coming. And so I decided I need to get the second surgery. I had gotten on my left when I was younger. Let me just get it. So roughly around 2017, I was doing security, 11-hour shifts, overnight, not allowed to sit down. It was really killing me, man. And I said, you know, I got to do it. And I remember, man, it's so weird how my spiritual walk and maturity altered with my physical health simultaneously. Like, it's so weird. But that just showed me that God deals with he wants our physical and spiritual health to be, they're intertwined, you know?
yeah,
And I decided to change my eating habits. That moment, they told me, we don't want to operate on you. You might die on the table because you have obstructive sleep apnea, high blood pressure. It was bad. Everything was like,
wow,
thank God I didn't have diabetes yet. It was bad. And they said I might die on the table. I was only 29 when they told me this too.
wow.
And I said, man, I got 3 kids. I don't want to hear that. And they're like, hey, do you want me to be honest with you? So all that to say, I ended up getting the surgery. And that day on, I said, I'm going to change the way I eat. I'm going to cut sugars down. I'm doing all this stuff, right? And I took physical health serious, but then I felt like God was putting something on my heart at the same time. He said, I don't know where it came from, bro, but in my best way I can describe it is like God was talking to me like, now that you're changing your physical health, I need you to get in that word
Mm,
every day. I want so as soon as January 1st hit, I started doing the Bible in a year
okay.
every single day, right? From that moment in 2018, I've never stopped, and I've on my sixth year of reading the Bible completely through, and I feel a conviction personally to not stop reading the Bible every day,
Yeah.
for a year, the Bible in a year plan, and I've been able to bring my wife along with me on that, my mom, Chris before he passed away, my brother, my friend, and my friend Javi, and it's different. Stefanato from Menace, I pulled him in on one of the years, um, And I've seen fruit from it 100%, bro. Being in the Word every day and getting through the Bible at the end of the year has changed my life, not just my physical health, but honestly, spiritual health. So there's no debate. Every morning I wake up right into the Bible playing.
Man, that's
Uh,
awesome. Our church does a thing called Join the Journey every day, and it's a Bible reading plan that we do with the body. We do a podcast every day on whatever the reading is. We have like a little book that
that's
goes through it.
awesome.
And it's just really fun. My wife and I are doing it this year
Nice,
together,
nice.
and I just started seminary too, so I'm with you, man.
Hey, let's go, man.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I did something similar a few years ago, but man, that's actually a great transition into this question I had because Summer Road was the song that I think, I did talk about how anxious and self esteem like got me to tear up, but Summer Road was the most, uh, was the song I can identify with the most.
Mm.
I grew up very simple, like hearing you say that, I'm like, man, that was just like me, except I didn't have gunshots in my life, which was nice.
Right.
But I did grow up,
Thank God.
pretty impoverished, pretty
Right, right.
hungry, and as a result, I got really big, and so I struggle with that self, like worth and like how I look, and even to this day, I still struggle with it. I have like up and
Same.
down bouts, of weight, and so man, is Summer Road like your, is that your crescendo? Like, is that your like that's your
Mm.
story right there? I mean, to me, that's like,
A little snapshot, yeah.
yeah,
You know, that verse, man, that's one of my emotionally favorite songs because I get emotional every time I talk about it because I'm really tight with my mom. Like I'm like the male version of my mom, anatomy wise, and
uh,
I always favored my mom more. And my story of how I came to be born is all like God. It's all a miracle. Like my mom was done with having kids before me,
mm,
and God had a plan. I was the smoothest of all the pregnancies. She didn't feel pain. It was like the weirdest stuff happened when I was born, and that's what I have to be reminded of all the time. When I talk to my mom and I'm discouraged, she's like, "No, you have God had a plan for you. You can't like I'm telling you, I didn't want kids before I had you. I didn't want a third kid necessarily, right? Because
right,
my dad and her went through so many things, and so um yeah, that memory is so interesting because it literally happened one night when I was taking our kids out, and we try to give them nice things, uh, and you don't want them to become entitled,
right,
but it happens sometimes, right? I mean, we become entitled from where our parents came from, right? Like our parents, my dad came from Brooklyn in the 60s and 70s, man. Like that's a whole nother era of New York that a lot of New Yorkers now don't understand what Brooklyn used to be like, right?
hmm
Um, racism was terrible over there. It was separation, my dad being a Puerto Rican and dealing with all that, and my mom coming from an island where she originally from Arecibo, Puerto Rico, where that's like country, and she grew up in poverty as well. So um her coming to PA and me going into the projects, Hall Manor projects, and we lived there. As humble as it was still an improvement from where she came from, where they had to patch up their underwear. They had to learn how to sew to
mm,
patch up underwear. Share one loaf of bread. A whole household full of like 12, 11 siblings. So I look at that, humbly. And I had a conversation with my wife. We went to like a steakhouse, right? And my kids, everyone we would do well. Hey, we're gonna go eat some steaks,
yeah,
whatever. They get these nice burgers, right? And one day, I just remember my sons were acting super just nitpicky about the food, and it was a nice place, bro. I was like, "What are you doing, man?" And I had a quick memory. It was like happens like that to me all the time. It was very very visual, and it felt like it was happening. And it's like a memory. You ever think back at your childhood and it feels like did that really happen? Did I
yeah,
did I really have a childhood? It feels like a vivid dream, right?
yeah,
As far back as you can go.
hmm
And I just remember that memory with my aunt in a car, or someone like my aunt. We grew up like I call her husband my uncle, and her son was like my cousin, and who's my dad's best friend. And his wife took us to go get McDonald's one time, and I just never forget how she said, "I'm gonna take you to McDonald's," and we looked at each other like we won the lottery. It was like, "What?" You know? Um, and I ordered a Big Mac, and I just couldn't open that Big Mac. I kept looking at the package, like I seen the commercials with this thing on it, and I just didn't want to open it because I was like, when's the next time I'm gonna have a Big Mac, you know?
Mm.
And my brother and sister are smashing those burgers down, man. You know, like they're older than me. They're like, bro, we've been around, like, eat it. I was literally holding it in my lap, looking at the package. You know, we're talking early 1990s, and I'm just looking at the package like, wow, it's a Big Mac, you know? And she got emotional looking at me, looking at the Big Mac, not wanting to open it. And she said, aren't you gonna eat? And I said, I never held a Big Mac before. And she got emotional over that, you know? So I ate, I ended up eating it. I don't remember what if I enjoyed it or not, but I do remember that. And uh so that memory was part of that, you know. But going back to more of the first verse, you know, I remember waking up, I was really hungry, and it all has to do with that same, that's why I included that in the verses. Going back to my mom, waking up in the morning, she had a little apron. I was late. I don't know what time. It was late, probably summertime, and the kitchen light was on, and I could always count on good old mom. Wake her up in the middle of the night with whatever little we had, and I said, "Hey, mom, I'm hungry," and she's just like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Toast." She's like, "All right, let's see what we have." So she's going through our stuff, and we barely have anything. She pulls out toast. I remember we used to have molds sometimes. She'd have to pull the mold off and all that. She goes, "Okay, I'm gonna make toast. Can I have mayo on it?" I used to love mayo on my toast, and my sister was the butter person. Listen, so I was me and my brother were those people. We were like the mayo on toast with like cereal. Like our the way we would get filled is like sugary cereal, right? And then toast, right? Or toaster's strudel if it was a good day, right? Oh man, toaster's strudel, right? That was a real treat, and we were high on sugar, right? And so I asked for mayo. I don't know why. Me and my brother were always the mayo on toast. I know it's mad unconventional. My sister was the butter on toast person, and she opens my sister was the regular one, and she opened the fridge up, and I remember we barely had anything in that fridge. I could still remember that, and she just looks at me. She makes a face like, "Oh man." She goes, I need you to pretend that there's mayo on it," and she made it into a game, and whatever you taste, if you believe it, you'll see it and you'll taste it. And I remember eating it, and best piece two toast I remember eating as a kid. And she walked me to bed. I went to sleep. You know, there was a bullet hole in in the window right there because we lived in probably the worst projects in the capital still at this point. And yeah, just I mean, even in the video, we drove through Hall Manor with my cousin. Like we stood in the car and we drove through with the camera and captured where I was born at. And yeah, man, that memory stood with me that night, and I just talked it out with my wife. It was like a therapy session. I just told my wife this memory came back, and then I called my mom to verify if it was real. I said, "Hey, mom, do you remember?" And my mom's memory is vague, but she goes, "I do remember. You used to, but you used to come wake up at night. I can't sleep. Something woke me up." Da, da, da. So she said that was something you did a lot. So it, all right, that's a song, man. And I wrote it a verse first. I put it up on Instagram, like looped it, and then I ended up reusing that verse and then writing the second verse to like mix it into like the story of like where I'm at now, what I'm still struggling with, the PTSD of having that. Like you said, I overate because didn't have much. So when I got a job,
Mhm.
bro, everybody ate.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
some of my friends who I don't even see anymore, these people, I spent hundreds of dollars feeding people because if I had a mentality, I didn't get to do this as a kid. So you're gonna eat. Hey, hey, what's up, bro? Is that your friend? Hey, let's go to a buffet, man. Let's go eat.
That's
Over,
nice.
overtly. I don't know if it
Yeah.
was bad. My wife used to. We're supposed to say for the wedding. I was like, I was at a buffet again. I'm sorry. It was bad, but
Man, that's
yeah.
crazy you bring up that McDonald's example because I mean, I remember it like yesterday. 3rd grade, last day of school, mom picking me up from school and be like, "We're going to McDonald's to celebrate." And I remember being so excited.
Right?
And I
Come
think
on,
that's
man.
why I'm addicted to McDonald's still at almost 40. I'm 39 now. So,
It took me a
um,
while. It took me a
yeah,
while, man.
I
It
still
took
love
me
it.
a while.
I think it's terrible, but like I'm just
Right,
I
right,
love
right.
it.
Yeah, it
You know?
they put something in the burger and the sauce. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I've been I sound like a drug addict. I've been at McDonald's free for a few years now. The fries still have an allure. I smell them in my dreams
Yeah.
sometimes, but I had to. You know, I smell McDonald's fries and I go, poverty. You know? So, you know, it's in
It's
the
in the
sense.
sense.
So how
So
did
how
your
did your
family
family
react to
react
that
to that
song? I mean,
song? I
that's
mean,
a
that's a
heavy You
heavy
know what's
song.
weird? I'm terrible. I'm terrible with this, right? So look, I'm over here spewing out all this information, right? And I feel bad, man, because you know, my mom, she's a very I'm a very I mean, I think most artists are very empathetic, you know, people.
Mhm. Yeah.
But we feel emotions on a strong level, right? So and I think it's a gift. It sometimes it can feel like a curse because you feel things so heavy. But I realized that it's a burden to have that gift and then to be able, but it's a gift to be able to release it for others, right? And push it out like like a psalmist or a David, or just to be able to express that is a gift, you know, even though it's they're suffering with it, right? Um, my mom heard it and she says, "How do you?" The first thing she said to me was, "How do you remember that stuff?" And it made us have dialogue. She was like, "You know, I never wanted that type of stuff to stick with you." And I said, I never looked at my mom, down on my mom, or resented her for anything. I just said, you know, it just made me realize how much more special you were to me, because my mom was a highlight in my childhood for me. You know, she was a disciplinarian, old fashioned, you know, but uh, she was very talkative and explain it. You know, she explained everything to me. She like if I was in trouble, we had talks, you know, and I implement that with my children. I talk with my children because of my mom. You know, my dad was kind of like, back up. You wilding out, get the belt, you know? And you know, I love my dad, but it is what it is. I mean, he was that guy. And so my mom was the let me talk to you. Let me and you know why you upset me? Do you know why? You know, so it made us have a conversation, and a lot of songs came from my experiences with my mom. Like I think she'll always kind of be in the music. It's a weird thing. Like my mom makes it into my songs without her knowing. There's a lot of songs that came from experiences with my mom or conversations with my mom from childhood. So I find as I get older, I'm actually processing my experiences from adolescence.
Mhm.
So a lot of my music is me processing past trauma. Uh, and I had that realization when I put this album out. I'm like, wow, God, I'm actually finally dealing with my kid self as, but I'm able to finally process it now as an adult.
Yeah.
You know,
Man, that's awesome. That's actually a really good transition into kind of one of the questions I had sent you was your album is very narrative focused.
right,
You're still doing really good rhymes, but you're not trying to do like crazy metaphors. Like you're just
right,
trying to let us into your life
right.
and how you walk through trauma, past hurts, your walk with the Lord. But then you get in, but you're in the menace movement. You got Dayton, you got Selah the corner, you're doing stuff with
Yeah.
Stefano, you're doing these guys. How does that collaboration with those guys start? And then does that like breed into you a competition to be like, no, I'm ready to put out some bars? Or how do you stay in that narrative focus? Like,
You
what's
know,
that?
that's one of the questions that I really was like, wait, you know, that's a good. I'm gonna tell you why. When I read that question, you know, thinking about when we talked about this, um, the reason that one stood out to me, right? You're right. I mean, we're talking Dayton, Stefanato, C4, right? Come on.
C4. Hey, how'd you get them to do a love song? Answer that later. I want to hear that one.
We'll go. Remind me,
We'll
remind me. No,
come
no,
back to that.
that's a great story. But that's a real good story. Me and him laugh about that all the time. It's such. I'm so happy. Listen, I'm so happy that I got the first official like love record that C4 featured on. I knew people were gonna be like, we did not see that coming. And I love it. I love it, man.
I literally
Um,
remember being like, wait, who is this C4? What? Like
right with his you know tone, and I love it because it's like I don't know how to explain it. Like I love food still anyway, but I'll talk about it like a custard or something, like crusty on the outside, nice and smooth on the inside, right? He gives us the texture of that, but then we got the smooth soul in it, you know. He does contrast well, I think, on those types of things. He likes soul music. He loves soulful stuff. And by the way, people don't know this either. Dayton loves R&B, loves soul music. We have that in common, like a lot. his dad, rest in peace to his dad. He passed many years ago, but he was a DJ. My dad's a DJ. There's a lot. It's weird. There's a lot me and Dayton have in common that a lot of people don't know about, and it's actually kind of eerie how much we have in common. Our dads are DJs, right? And this has to do with the question. Our dads are DJs. Uh, uh, we both have the same birth date. Not different year. January 26th, same birth date. And without giving too much info out, but people know this now, it's like we have a similar first name. So um, it's weird how many 6 degrees of separation we have, me and him. And a lot of the similar tastes. Dayton is, to me, when I think of Dayton as an artist, as a rapper, as an MC, he's like it. He's the quintessential bar spitter, right? So he's the everything has to be on beat. The flow has to be patterned this way. The cadence is important. The timing of the rhymes. He's very intricate, right? Dayton will really take his time. Uh, I would put C4 in that bracket of just it's all, but he's such a fast thinker, bro. C4 could give you 4 bars in a second. He just thinks about them and hey man, I got 4 bars for that verse you want. Look, I just came up with them just by talking.
Yeah.
Stefanato, super intricate, right? Or Cephas, amazing writer as well, like super intricate. So for me, um, it's that they actually are a fan of that style of music. That's what kind of gives it like makes it easy for them. And also me and Stefanato, for instance, we go back to like '06. You
Mm,
know,
okay.
Me and him have a lot of history. So he's always known me to be a soulful guy,
Yeah.
jazzy guy. But he met me when I was in a more boom bap premiere, like a alchemist type of feeling. So
Right.
he knew me for being like a bar rappery kind of person, and rappery. I don't know if that's a word. And and so he he knew like, man, I know what I'm getting into with you, right? And Steph, I love when I get to work because Steph's a great storyteller too, man.
Yeah.
He's not just a metaphor, punchline person, simile person. He has so much. There's so much to his testimony, especially when you listen to like "Till Heaven Comes," right? There's so much to his testimony that a lot of people don't get to hear him speak about. But when I can get him in that bag of just honesty and wait, all of our music is honest, but more of an introspective honesty,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I love that. So the fact that I didn't have to tell them any prerequisite, they kind of knew what they were getting into. They're like, man, I know with you, you're gonna make me go deep. I'm like, yeah. And to me, I'm in a place as an artist and rapper now where I'm starting to add on to that to the answer is I'm starting to get to a place of I want rap to be treated like every other musical art form. Um, we're still seen as gimmicky because of how we portray ourselves in the media, not us like rappers, but the other rappers. They kind of make us look weird.
Hmm.
So I want people to look at rap like a jazz artist or a rock and roll. Like, man, no, that's art, right? And so in my 30s now, I'm realizing I want to give of myself more. And it does come at the sacrifice of some rhyme schemes, but to me it's like I want people to hear it and I want them to go, wow, he's talking to me. It's weird. I feel like I want it to be conversational. And with Dayton, like still hopeful, that was easy. You know what I mean? Like Dayton talks about these types of things a lot. And I love Dayton because whenever I do an album, Dayton gets to pick where he wants to come in. He's like, that's the one for me. He picked it. There, I'll show him a beat. Hey, what you think about this beat? That still hopeful was just me. It was just a long verse. Dayton goes, give me 16. I want that. All right. I added it on. Stefanato, that was a re-rendition of something we already worked on that I lost.
Yeah.
And C4 Show Grace was a rendition of something else, but I reproduced the record to match
Oh
more.
wow.
But I wanted it to have a crunchy sound. So when C4 came on it, I set the proper pace for him where it's
Okay.
like crunchy, but it's soulful. Like I wanted it to hit a little bit. And so yeah, so even Selah, uh, Selah was initially not the first go around because I had Steph was possibly going to jump on that record, right? But when he heard my verse, he goes, "I can't relate with that part of your life.
Mm.
I don't have the same story." He has an amazing testimony, but he's like, "I can't relate with that because that verse was based off of two individuals, and I just intertwined them, true people, real people." And Selah spoke from his actual experience,
Oh
so
wow.
Yeah, it made it easy for them, I think.
Yeah, shout out to Sailor. I think he had, probably one of the best years as a feature artist last year. I mean,
Man, yeah, he
I
did,
think you
right?
could make a playlist of just his features, and they're all
And by
bangers,
the
and
way, I love working with genuinely authentic individuals, not just
mm,
believers, but authentic individuals.
yeah.
Selah is a really good brother, man.
Mm,
He's here to hear you out. When he souls into you, he souls into you. Like he's a good dude, man. Like a lot of people don't
yeah.
know that, and that goes for everybody on the album. Yeah,
That's good. So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that these men are humble enough to come in and let you kind of direct them through what you're trying to do, and they're like on board with that. Not necessarily them coming and be like, "I'm gonna do what I want to do on your song." Has that ever happened before in maybe some previous records, or have you experienced that with artists? I feel like that's probably what happens in the more of the mainstream, but maybe not the
yeah.
Christian hip hop sector. What's your experience with that?
Usually, so I like to work with friends, right?
Mhm.
So anybody you see me work with, even like shout out to activists who he's been low key for a long time, but he's a veteran in CHH in Philly, and I'm a fan of his, and we were building over the year or two, and I told him I was a fan, and he was getting privy to me, and just building an actual connection with people. So when we actually work, it's a byproduct of our friendship, right? So I've tried doing let me get a feature, let me try to pay this person. That all is cool, and I still might do things like that, but um for my albums, I tend to reach the people. I go, man, me and you, we're family. It's gonna translate on the project, and they respect the song enough that I've already laid. I usually send them something with my verse on it already, and a chorus, so they already see. Oh, he set the stage. Okay, and I give them a lot of freedom. By the way, I say, hey man, hear what I did. Pray about it, think about it, and then put whatever you feel like to do on that.
Do they
And
ever give you like do you guys ever go and give feedback, or like do they ever say like, "Hey, you should change this," or do you ever say, "Hey, change this a little," like what does that like editing process look like?
not on when I feature with people typically, and I thank God, the friends I usually get to work with, they're very like they usually knock it out the park, man. I'm like, hey, I got nothing to say, right? They're just really good at what they do. But on the reverse, I've done features for some of them, or particular where I don't, because I'm very uh who said it best? I think it was Dayton, or maybe even C4 was like, you're more poetic with your
I
pen,
was
like you're
just gonna say poetic.
for so I'm sometimes, man, I can go like this with what top subject matter when I'm on somebody else's song. And so sometimes they gotta rear me, hey man, look, can we try to stick with more like this? You know what I mean? Can we keep it, you know? And so I remember I've been told to make three renditions of verses. But I write quick. So like, within an hour, I remember Dayton had me rewrite some a verse, and I remember I sent him three different verses in an hour. I was like, all right, which one do you like? Because I tend to just flow, you know.
It just pours
So
out.
and for me, it's the reverse. It's like usually I give people more options typically, and they're like, "Hey, can you go more this direction?" And I'll go that direction. I'm like, "Yeah, sure." But with me, I usually keep it, uh, I just know my feature. I know who it is. Like I'm like, man, I know what you're gonna do when it's ready. And usually they won't send it until they feel it's ready either. So
Yeah.
it's working with those type of people.
Yeah. So is there anyone in CHH right now that you're like, man, I really want to work with that guy.
Oh yeah,
I want to, who are some of the names you'd want to do with?
there's a few. Off the back, I would say I love Taylor Gray, man. Taylor Gray is he stays in his own thing though, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's not super reachable. He doesn't just do features. So I respect him. I love how he just raps and he expresses his, like, he just has a dope voice, a dope flow. Uh Man, he's slept on by a lot of, but the real ones know who he is,
Yeah.
Taylor Gray.
I actually missed his EP last year. I didn't hear it till like a couple weeks
Oh
ago. I was like, when did
man,
this
bro.
drop? And it's incredible.
And because he's not like out there you know what I mean? He's not
Yeah.
really pushing it, but he's such a good artist, man. And I love what he talks about. So Taylor Gray, Stephen the Levite, man, like
Mm.
I'm such a fan of Stephen the Levite, bro. I would love one shot at a record with him.
Okay.
Him and Taylor Gray, mainly. Who else, man? There might be one or two people I can't think of off the rip. Um, I loved working with Crumb, formerly known as Plato.
Yo, dude, hey, real quick. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see my like introduction video on my channel, but Plato was the first Christian hip hop artist I listened to. And
Yeah, yo,
so
Deep
I
Space
love
Five,
him.
man.
Yes, Deep Space
Deep
5,
Space
all
Five.
that, Ill Harmonics. I
Yes.
actually got to meet him at South by Southwest a couple years, like
Let's
this was like a
go.
decade ago. And I'm standing in line for a Pharaoh Monch show, and I just
Ooh,
hear a
okay, yeah.
dude talking behind me, and he says, "Yeah, I used to be in this group called Ill Harmonics." And I turn around, I'm like, "Are you Plato?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, what's up?" I'm like, "Dude, I still have Lonely Superstar in my car right now." And he's like,
Wow,
"For
wow.
real?" And we like dapped up. He bought me a beer. We ended up chatting all night.
He's a good dude. Well, we worked together when he was still Plato, 2011, and
Okay.
I opened up for him and I opened up for Sivion.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
both of those guys, solid individuals, love them. But Plato, especially with Plato's style, like he's so like he got a dope voice, man.
He's snappy too.
Yeah, it annoys me how dope he is. Like, you ever just be like, he's really dope like that, because
Yeah.
you met him. He's really dope.
Yeah, he's
I
real
feel like
nice.
he could just rap right there, and you're like, oh, this guy's good. So I would easily do another record with Plato. I got to do one with him or Crumb, respecting
Yeah.
his new alias. We know him from his OG stuff,
Yep.
but Crumb, man,
That Dart record he released in 21 was good.
yes, yes, yes. And
I
then, oh man, wow, that's a great cut because there's so many people I could think about. But like right away, yeah, them. Um, I love the artists coming out now that are from the state too, from PA. So like, shout out to the Q Flow, Prodi, who I got to meet all of them, and they're we all talk, we got to talk. Those are solid dudes, man. But like, yeah, that whole team, like that whole North team,
Yeah, they're putting out some good work right now. Abel,
dude.
Abel's dope.
Abel is nasty. Yo, that's another one.
He's
I'd have
nasty.
to really take my time on a song with Abel too. All of them guys. So yeah, man, I'm a fan of all of them though. You know what I mean? I'm
So this is, now that you talked about like all the other rappers, and we kind of talked about like collaborating. I think the most important topic we can talk about as Christian hip hop fans and artists is the juxtaposition of mainstream hip hop values and Christian values, and how
right.
those things kind of like interact but shouldn't, right? And so, hip hop values are like money, power, respect, women, cars, money. Those are all things that we don't do. And some people look at Christian hip hop as corny because of that.
Hmm.
Um, what do you say to that fan, or even just the Christian who says, I hear a lot of Christians say that, and I'm like, wait, excuse me, so Hillsong's not is fine, but
Right.
you know this Christian hip hop element is corny. Like, I'm trying to help me understand. So how do you kind of like talk to people about that, and how do you
Yeah.
interact with those? Because even in like our kind of like, we talk to a lot of the same people on Twitter, and
Right. Right.
that gets, I feel like that's a cycle every 3 months that it gets brought up. What's your take
Chris
on that?
Arden, rapper who happens to be Christian rapper. Yeah,
Yep.
that's been going on since before me, man. You know what? I'll tell you this. I feel like it goes back to the idea of doing art, um, because you never, I love how people put it, right? A painter who is a Christian painter can paint anything, right? I don't know, a tree, fruit, anything. And they're not like, man, that's not a Christian painting.
Mm,
You know what I mean? But he's a Christian. And saying that to say, uh, to me, we get so hung up on the subgenre of what it is when it's like, dude, we're Christians, period. Um, I think Christians get either caught up in that title, if you will, and it becomes the end all or be all, right? And then you have the Christians who are like, y'all tripping. We kind of just want a license to do whatever. You know what I mean? We're still Christian. So it's like that debate is ongoing. I feel like that kind of shoots us in the foot because we're in. It's a lot of infighting going on,
Yeah.
and we're not letting the main thing be the main thing. A lot of these minor things are so they are whack, you know. But I would challenge the notion that Christian is whack to a secular person because when I used to freestyle as an MC and kind of gently battle, you know, secular artists,
Right.
I wouldn't curse or anything, and they were impressed by that. They were like, "Man, how do you still rhyme and not use those words as a crutch?" And I said, "Because I don't depend on those words, you know." Um, so I've actually in my lifetime been complimented on the fact that I don't use profanity. I'm always using what they call positivity, right?
Hmm.
Or spirituality. That's how they try to cloak it, right?
Yeah.
Mask it. Oh, it's spiritual music. It's uplifting. You know, I'll never and that's another thing. I used to get dogged out for not saying Jesus enough when I was a teenager in my rhymes, right?
Mm.
And
That's like the other side of it, right? Of like
oh yeah,
there's
the
that
churches,
crew. Yeah.
Eddie, you know, you gotta say, you know, Jesus and da, da. And I'm like, listen, you know, and now when I'm speaking of him more, it's like, now that's not cool, right?
Right.
It's the craziest thing. Oh, you saying it too much now, you know. But when a Chance the Rapper says Jesus, it's cool.
Right.
When Kendrick says it, it's cool.
Hmm.
And Christians will actually
Or
fight to
Kanye.
defend those. Right, and Christians will fight to defend the rappers who are kinda, like, in this weird s religious, theological place over those who might have a sound doctrinal view, biblical view, over those people who are iffy. They'll
Yeah.
be like, "But they mention Jesus and they sound dope." It's like, there's a lot of dope people who are living for Jesus
Hmm.
that
That's been my
because
argument the whole time. You're just not
come on,
listening.
man.
Yeah.
You're not listening. Like the Taylor Grays or like we just talked about a few of these guys. It's like, how does a Stefanato exist? And we're complaining about songs that have meaning and structure. How does a C4 exist? But we're like, nobody got bars. You're like, what? How does a
Yeah.
Dayton exist? Like, and it's funny. It comes from us, bro. It comes from our ilk, right? It the world embraces them. It's the weirdest thing. Dayton gets a lot of love from secular OGs and veterans. I get more love from the secular local scene than from the Christian broad scene. It's ama it's a it, bro. I've met people behind closed doors, like underground rappers, like big ones, who will you're dope. I know you Christian. I don't care because we don't care about that. We just care if you're dope. That's what they'll tell you. And if you're good, they acknowledge it. They give credit to you. Christians are like, you know, the vibes are off. I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's such a weird scale. So I'm like, you know, obviously I think they're wrong. I mean,
Yeah. Of course
we're
they
not
are.
corny.
I
We're
mean,
not corny.
at work, I'm known as the Christian hip hop guy. I'm at
Yeah.
a predominantly white church that listens to predominantly Christian contemporary music. But like, our young adults ministry and our students ministry, we got John Keith and Mike LV last year. We brought KB in a couple weeks ago.
Right.
So like, there's a little bit of that, and so now I'm like the consultant. Like, hey, should we bring this guy in? What do you think about this guy? And then they had me. I made a comment to one of the guys for the young adults ministry. They were playing like a little playlist, like a pre-service playlist for like an hour, and they just had a lot of Reach Records artists. And shout out to Reach. I mean, they got an
Right.
amazing
Right. Right.
library and catalog of artists. But I went up to him and was like, hey, there's more Christian hip hop artists
Right.
that aren't Lecrae and
Right.
Andy Mineo, right? And
Right.
so a week later, he hits me up. And he's like, hey, can you update our playlist? And I just threw everyone on there.
Yeah.
And this is a student ministry that houses 4,000 people a week.
Wow.
And so hopefully I got some good feedback. People are like, dude, your playlist was fire. Like, who is this? Who is this? I'm like, dude, just follow the playlist. And so they just need to be exposed to it is what it is, right? Like you
Thank
have
you.
these
Yeah, I
artists that y'all
completely
sound
agree.
like when I'm listening to your album, it takes me to like a People Under the Stairs, Thess One. You
Wow.
mentioned
That's good.
Premier, like that kind of stuff. Like Thess One's one of my favorite producers all time, hands down. Probably top two next to LP. Um, but you kind of have that vibe. And so when I want that mood,
Yeah.
I know where to go, you know?
You
And
know, I'll tell you, I felt like, and shout out to Dayton. I felt like I took a big risk. You know, let me tell you, bro. There was a lot of music I did have in the vault. that
Mhm.
could have easily been wavy, and I could do that too.
Yeah.
But man, if you catch me on a regular day in my car, I'm listening to jazz. If it's not jazz or older music, like soul music and stuff like that, still, it's probably worship music, man, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. Um, that's stuff that touches my heart because I actually serve in a worship team in my church, and um, that's stuff that does something to me.
Yeah.
Real, not to knock any the genre and the electrical aspect of it,
Yeah.
like the synthesized version of it, but something about instrumentation, music, it does something to my soul, man. Like I can cry listening to somebody play a piano.
Yeah.
And so to something beautiful about it, instrumentation and singing and rapping with it, um, like if anything, bro, I'm willing to die on that hill. You know what I mean? I told a few of my peers, I said, look, if I got to take the chance so that you guys can be free creatively and not feel like you have to do what everyone else is doing, I'll do it. I'll be the guy. You know, maybe it'll come at the sacrifice of some streamage, and exposure into some degree, but at least I know I took the shot, so somebody else can come along and go, hey man, I heard that project, maybe we could try something like in a similar vein or the way we want to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think if that's your goal,
Yeah.
um, for that, I think you nailed it on the head because I mean,
Thank you,
this
bro.
project definitely spoke to me on multiple songs. It's been a constant replay the past few weeks. Even my wife will sit down and listen to the whole thing with me, and
Wow.
she's a fan too. So she goes to all the hip hop concerts with me. It's great.
Oh man,
Um, and
I hope I
so,
see you. Maybe I don't know if you'll be going to Flavor Fest this year, man. That'd be cool.
where's Flavor Fest at?
It's in Tampa, Florida.
When is that? What time is that? Like, what time of year is
I
that?
think they're doing it in November this year because
Okay.
of the hurricane season thing. Kind of ran late last year,
Okay.
but they do it every year, man. That I would you should definitely go. We usually all are there. Like Menace
Okay.
Movement shows up for that.
Man,
Um,
say less. Like we
I
went
would
to
love
Holy
to meet
Smoke
you
last
guys in
year.
person.
Oh yeah,
I would
well,
love that.
definitely. We're going to
November,
Smoke Fest this year, Holy Smoke Fest this year in Nashville.
nice,
We're gonna see Lecrae in a couple weeks. He's gonna be here in Dallas. Um, but yeah, so we'll travel for shows. I mean,
bro.
I just got into like kind of doing this commentating thing last year, so I didn't
Bro,
even know
the
Flavor Fest was a
networking
thing.
is gonna be amazing. Yeah, it's like a 4-day thing. They got seminars. You get to network with everybody's within proximity.
Oh
It's not
wow.
like it's one of the last of its kind, by the way. Nobody does
Okay.
this anymore. Shout out to Urban D or Pastor Tommy, who runs a crossover church in Tampa. He's a hip hop like staple in Christian hip hop, and he's originally from Philly. But man, I got to meet some of my heroes in Christian rap because of going to this thing. I got to meet have a conversation with like Ambassador
Oh
and
wow.
legends, bro. Soup the Chemist was there, and he actually
Wow.
performed. Man. I was so oh uh
You were in
uh
heaven.
bro, like Hazakim, like lamp mode artists. You'll see people there that you're like, and it was dope because I was like, man, I'm giving them their flowers now, like.
Yeah.
I sat there with Ambassador and probably talked his ear off, but I was like, "Hey, man, thank you for what you did." Like, you know what I mean? Y'all set the standard. Cross movement set this huge standard.
Yeah, they did.
I mean,
They
if it wasn't
definitely
for
did.
cross movement, we could argue there'd be no Lecrae or Reach.
That's
That'd
a
be at
fact.
its pinnacle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, now that the album's over, or not over, released,
Yeah.
uh, what's the Lord teaching you right now? Like,
Mm.
what's the season post release like? Like, are you already working on the next thing? Are you taking the time to kind of decompress? What's going on?
You know, uh, I'm living vicariously through the listeners with the album. So, like, when I hear what people say about it, it encourages me greatly because it's quality over quantity for me, right? So like hearing one or two people get, hey man, that got me through something or that blessed me, that's worth everything, bro. To me, I'm like, man, praise God. Like I had a brother tell me that he shared it with a friend that wasn't saved and it spoke to him. And I'm
Mm,
like, he's not saved, man. And the songs he liked were very Christian. That's what blew me away. The song I did with Steph, which is like coming from a Christian, almost being
yeah.
frustrated with their walk.
Mhm.
uh, uh, needing encouragement from the Spirit. He liked that song, and he's not a Christian. I'm like, huh, you know, and so stuff like that drives me to see people responding to it. Bro, the message, including you, the messages, man. I cried reading your message. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I'm gonna keep it real. I got emotional reading your breakdown, man. I was like, wow, wow, like, okay, God, some people see this. It's not in vain, and obviously God sees it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It means a lot, and so that, of course, I'm working. Of course, I don't think I can ever like turn it off, but um, I have that project I told you about that I was working on prior. That's basically getting done with my brother Soy, and that'll feed your boom bap
Okay.
uh, cravings a lot. Super boom bap.
Can't wait.
It's like I don't know how to explain. It's like he got like a Mad Lib flavor, a little bit of that high tech
Ooh.
Premiere thing going on, and then the way I've heard it said with those who've gotten to hear it is like, man, it reminds me of like Gangstar, like that era, like them two guys coming together. So
Love
I
Gangstar.
think Oh, I think you'll love it, man. And so that maybe in the summer, early summer, I'll put that one out. And
Okay.
I'm working on the EP. It's kind of an exclusive with a producer who's he's been making his rounds, man. He's in respected Perry Illist. He's from Canada. Shout out to Perry Illist. He's a good dude. We've been building, and he's like, "Yo, let's work." And so I got two solid records with him already. That I'm like, "Wow, I'm really liking," and it's coming from a similar place of just like from intimate, but from the Lord, but it's just digging deep, just digging deep.
So
So
how do you hold on to those records though? Like you got these things that are done and ready to go. Like what keeps you
yeah.
from like, oh, I just can we drop it? Like let's drop it. Or like what do you
What the
how do you
truth?
yeah. Yeah, I do.
Being signed.
Okay, there you
we
go.
we can't just put it out because we get in trouble, but we're contractually obligated not to put. So we have to go through a system of quarterly or scheduled releases. I
Yeah.
have to respect the timeline. But before I was signed, bro, I was giving people 2 3 albums a year, man, easy.
Wow.
um, Dayton had to like really kind of harness that and say, all right, man, let's focus all of that into one. I mean, and I might be able to. So on Menace, I'm thinking. I know the Perry Illis one I'm working with is definitely going to be a Menace release. I already spoke to Dayton. The one I'm doing with my brother Soy, we're doing it at like I said, like a Gangstar. So it's never like Guru and Premiere. It's a Gangstar. So we're doing that under a group name, which I'll tell you, it's going to be called Beanies and Snapbacks.
Okay, I like
It's
that. I like that.
very hip hop. I always usually wear snapbacks. He usually wears beanies, my bro. And so we're gonna. It's definitely that's what you think it is. It's that. It's just straight hip hop. It's
Sweet
straight hip
man.
hop.
I can't that's man, that's exciting for the year. That's gonna be
Uh,
awesome. And man, I'd
that'll
love
be like June-ish,
okay.
maybe
Well,
June-ish.
let's get together again and talk process through that because I'm gonna want to
But
hear
I'll
that.
do this with you anytime. You let me know, man. I'm
Sweet.
in.
Well, last two questions. First one, favorite album of 2022.
Oh man, that's a tough one,
It
bro.
can't be a Menace release too.
Look,
That's
look.
another.
I was like, look. That's how you know I used to dig in the crates, right? I'm like, uh, that's tough, man. Can I have an honest admission with you?
Sure, yeah, yeah.
I don't listen to a lot of the genre, and I'm gonna tell you why. Outside of certain peers, I'm gonna tell you
Right.
why. I don't. Artists are sponges, and I
Mm,
don't like to be influenced. So a lot of the music I listen to some people would shock them. Like I got to get told through my friends, "Hey man, did you hear so and so?" And then I go look. To be completely honest, so in the genre, I'm hearing the singles that come out when they come out outside of Menace. It's just I'll hear stuff like that bit by bit. But I've gotten to a place where I protect my ears from outside influence too much.
that's
Like,
smart. I mean, that's leading the witness, if you will. Like, you don't want to be
yes,
led into kind of what everyone else sounds
I
like.
mean it speaks to I was there being what it is because what inspired that was no hip hop. It was strictly jazz. Me listening to the jazz station every day, boring my kids to death. Uh, my wife's like, "We can't listen to Christian rap." I'm like, click, you know, and then listening to worship music a lot. That's why a lot of the choruses are very worshipy.
Mm,
Um, If you think about it, it's very worship influenced. Like I would listen to like the Maverick City stuff and like because I like that gospel
Yeah.
mix, and then I go back to like the Fred Hammonds and the you know Marvin Sapp, maybe a little bit of that, a little I go back, and so old Kirk Franklin's like his vintage era stuff, the '90s. I like to go back with a lot of the work. Donnie McClurkin, I can keep going, but or soul music. So for me, I'm not gonna lie, man. Outside of so if it gets to me, it's because my peers and my friends are pressing me. Hey, man,
You gotta listen.
go listen to this.
That's smart though. Like I don't like that's not even a knock at the genre, I don't think. I think that's just that's part of your creative process.
Yeah,
Like that's
and I also listen to a lot of producers.
yeah.
So like Daniel Still's one of my favorites, obviously, because we work together.
Daydream
And
was that
but
the Daydreamer EP?
yeah,
Was that
look,
yeah,
I
that
got
one
a
was
little head
fire.
on. He's like a brother too, and we have I really like he's like a big bro to me, and when we work, it's just organic. I can't even explain it, bro. He could send me something he made on them, and in that minute we talked, and he's sitting there cooking. He's fat. He's a genius.
Wow.
And then, hey man, check your mail. I'm like what? And then I'll send him something back within an hour. Like, all right, man, I'm sending it back. So
Okay.
we have a very symbiotic relationship when it comes to beats and stuff. So
Wow.
uh,
Well,
producers,
if I can give you a suggestion, then mine
yes,
was DJ Mike LV in 1995's Bodega album.
okay.
Super boom bap,
Oh, okay, so I've heard snippets of that. I will
super
say that.
boom bap.
Okay, I got you. I got you.
I mean,
Shout
every
out to them though. Yeah.
yeah, every single track sounds like it's influenced by a different era of 90s hip hop. Or not a
Mm.
different era,
I
but like
heard.
a different
Listen, that's
producer.
one of the ones that got to me, and I'm like, man, okay, I gotta go listen to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know why? But I will go because you said it. Now I'm gonna go. But shout
It's
out to everybody. Yeah, it's not from a place of like I don't listen to nobody else. You know what
right.
I mean? I only listen to my stuff to practice first, to have it memorized for like
Mm,
events and stuff like that.
yeah, that's smart. Well, hey, that's your process, and that's what that's what we're here to talk about. So,
Yeah.
man, thank you for the time. Last question before we
Yes,
go
sir.
is, how can we be praying for you and your family?
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Uh, Man, so being an artist, it comes with a lot of it's emotional up and downs, right? We get forced, it's like almost like an oxymoron to be Christian and to be seen. It's dangerous, right? I mean,
Mm,
it's very easy to slip into the devil side of things, right? Look at me, you know, the vanity, and so that's not too much of a struggle for me because I've always struggled with self-esteem anyway. So like
yeah,
I don't like to be on camera too much, to be completely honest. And Dayton used to be like, "Come on, man, you gotta do music videos. You gotta do this, you gotta do that." Uh, if I could just drop albums and disappear, I'd probably do that, you know. But yeah, man, just the idea, like just praying for that aspect, just being an artist in general for God is I think is a challenge, and also just man, you know, with the family, just they're so supportive. Like my kids they actually like listening to my music, which is a miracle, right? Like Dad, what are you working on now? And they actually know everything I'm working on, and my wife. So yeah, just keeping them in prayer. They're so supportive. Like any prayer for my family, I'll take that. Um, for the journey as an artist, always take prayer for that, man, because God is great, but man, whenever a man is involved, that's when it gets a little tricky. You know what I
yep,
mean?
that's true. Well, hey, let me pray, and then
Yes, sir.
let's close out.
Oh,
Heavenly
thank you.
Father, I just thank you so much for Knaladeus. Thank you for using him to spread your word and use his life as an example to many. Thank you for the way that it impacted me and my wife. Thank you for the lives that it impacted, like that young man who isn't a believer and heard this album. I just pray that you would use that to continue to reach other people that maybe don't know you, and I pray that that wouldn't get in anyone's head. That wouldn't raise egos. It wouldn't raise
Yes,
um, any sort of um, way that would lift himself up, but that would just lift you up, Father. I pray for just these next few albums that they would still continue to bring you glory through every single song, lyric, and beat produced. Thank you, Father, for today. Thank you for this time with Naladeus. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I always love prayer, bro.
Hey, everybody, if you like that interview and you want to hear more about I Was There, I have a review over at my channel on Big Swiss CHH. Hope to see you there. Thanks for tuning in.